My name is Deshawn Russell, and my business is Southern Elegance Candle Company, and we are located in Rayford, North Carolina, which is right outside of Fayetteville. I was actually a teacher, and I was making gifts as teacher appreciation gifts for my coworkers. And so I made a variety of things. I made soaps, sugar scrubs, body butters, but the candles were the thing that everybody really liked. So I started selling at flea markets. And quite honestly, one day I realized I was making almost as much money selling on the weekends at the flea market as I was teaching. So it kind of dawned on me that I really could turn this into a business. So I got serious and I really looked at my offerings, trimmed down the pairings so that I didn't have quite as many candles, focused really hard on my branding. And one day I just went into work and quit and started a candle company. Because I was a teacher, I didn't have any type of business background. So as cliche as it sounds, I watched a lot of Shark Tank and The Profit to kind of learn how to run a business. And I watched a lot of YouTube videos to learn how to run a candle business. I would watch every kind of YouTube video of any candle company, and I would look in the background to see how they had everything set up. And when I set up my first space, I literally set it up the same way that I saw in YouTube videos. So I had a shipping area, I had a storage area, and then I had a production area. And I put processes in place so that everything became a system. How to make the candles, how to store the candles. And the processes just work really well. So, when I talk about my brand really is an extension of my life. All of the places are places that I have visited. All of the scents are scents that really are familiar to me. So when I went about trying to figure out what is going to set my brand apart from everybody else, what is going to make somebody buy my candle versus somebody else's candle, because working at the flea markets and the festivals, I saw that there were a lot of candle companies out there. Pretty much anybody can start a candle company, but your story and your reason why really is what sets you apart. So I really sat down and said, what can I authentically talk about? And one thing that always came up, my husband is in the military, we traveled a lot, and I always wanted to come back home. So my grandmother is from a small town in North Carolina. He's from a small town in Florida. So these memories that we both shared became the core of the company. So Durham is where I grew up. Raleigh is right down the street. We've traveled to Charleston, Savannah, Columbia. So each candle really became a story about something personal in my life, and continues to. So all of the scents that we choose, we try to wrap a story around that candle and that scent combination. So we started literally in my kitchen with one pot, pouring candles. And because the branding was so strong, when people saw it, it really resonated with other North Carolina businesses. So we were able to pick up some consistent orders fairly quickly. So we went from one pot to 3 pots, and then we went from my stove to my garage, and then we got a pretty significant order with our riveter, and we had to move out of the garage. So when it got to the point where I had to move out of the garage, there were some things that had to be put into place so that we can replicate the same candle consistently. So that every time you got a candle from Southern Elegance, it was going to be the same fragrance load, the same flame, the same scent throw. Everything had to be consistent. So that's when I really started trying to figure out what am I doing and how can I do this consistently to put out the same product every time. So having to grow kind of made me really want to put those processes in place. The second thing that forced me to put those processes in place were hiring my first employees. So having them then replicate the same thing that I was doing. So, and it makes everyone's job easier when the steps are just heat the wax to this temperature, add the fragrance at this temperature, pour at this temperature. It just really made everybody's life much easier to have those processes in place. Once we had those processes in place and we could replicate the candles, then it became easy to do 100, 200, 500 candles a day. It really doesn't matter, because all we're doing are following the same steps every single time. And then that allowed me to pick up more accounts. Once you start picking up more accounts and then people see that you are consistent in your branding and you're putting out a consistently good product, then more stores started picking us up. So I would say that direct sales is the best because you have higher margins. So anytime I can personally sell a candle to someone, that's great. But the one way to grow your business is really to get into stores. So selling one candle to one person is great, but selling 200 candles to a store and having them reorder 3 or 4 times a year really is what has been the catalyst in my business growing. So I think in the beginning, you really have to decide, how do you want your business to grow? Do you want to be a direct sales where you're selling to consumers, which means you're going to do a lot of farmers markets, you're going to do a lot of marketing one-on-one with your customers, or do you want your business to be in a lot of stores and boutiques? Each one requires you to focus on different areas. Or do you want a hybrid of the two? I think in this day and age, people can really decide whatever kind of business they want. For me personally, my business is really a hybrid of the two. It's about, it's about 2/3 wholesale, 1/3 direct sales, where I'm at the large festivals and still doing a lot of craft shows. So the individual sales gives me an opportunity to really talk to my customers, find out what scents they like, which ones they don't like, which cities they would like to see next incorporated into the destination line. But being in stores really gives me the consistency of sales that helps the business just literally stay afloat. So it's really a combination of both of those. So with Etsy, because Etsy is an artisan marketplace, anybody can start a store on Etsy. Anybody selling anything pretty much that they make can start a store on Etsy. So you get on Etsy and there are literally hundreds of thousands of sellers. And there are probably tens of thousands of candle makers. So again, you have to kind of go back to what is going to set my company apart from all of these other tens of thousands of candle companies out there. So you're going to have to set aside a budget for marketing on Etsy. You're going to have to drive traffic to Etsy so that the more people that buy your product on Etsy, the more likely Etsy is going to show your products to other people in order for them to buy it. You also have to have really great photography if you're going to have an Etsy store, because when people look at your pictures, it has to tell the story of your brand. If your brand doesn't have a story, then your pictures become a little muddled and people are not really sure what it is that you're really selling. So for Etsy, great photography, a great brand story, a great backstory about what you do is paramount. Once all of those things are in place, it's still up to you to drive people to Etsy to buy it. So you really need your own website in addition to your Etsy sites to make sure that you're maximizing the number of selling channels that you have. Etsy is a wonderful platform. It has a built-in audience that is looking for whatever it is that you're selling, but you and tens of thousands of other people are selling the same thing, so you're going to have to make sure that whatever you're doing stands out from the crowd. Etsy, if you can get into Etsy wholesale, it's a little bit more challenging now. So if you can get into Etsy wholesale, there are stores that are looking for new lines on Etsy wholesale also. I've probably picked up about 20 stores through Etsy wholesale. So it has been beneficial, but a lot of the stores that we get into are local. So just getting out, cold calling, sending products. You just have to have a multi-pronged approach to building your business. So when I first started selling, there were other candle makers at the flea market where I was selling that sold candles for about half of my current prices, which made me feel like I needed to lower my prices, which I did. So in the beginning, my candle prices were very low. I quickly learned that, number one, you can't wholesale with low candle prices because the industry standard is that the store is going to pay half of whatever the retail price is. So when you go into it, you kind of need to know, what is the end game here? Am I trying to get into a store, or am I going to do direct sales? If you're doing direct sales, you really can price your candles a little bit lower. The other thing about a candle is all about perceived value. What do people really believe that the candle is worth? So then it becomes not about how much did it cost me to make it, but how much are people willing to pay for it? That goes back to branding and packaging. The better branded it is, the more beautiful your package, the higher your price point. When I figured that out, I hired a graphic designer because my skill is mixing and pouring, it's not designing. So I worked with a dedicated graphic designer whose main job it is to work with small artisan crafters. I told her my brand story, and we worked until we were able to kind of get a box and a label that really fit what the story is that I'm trying to tell. And we also put the story actually on the box too, so that if you weren't familiar with the brand, you could literally turn it over and read about what the story is behind my company. So once I did that, I could pretty much charge whatever I want for the candle within reason. I started low because I think we all struggle with pricing. It's just a point where I know how much it costs me to make. So am I being greedy for charging more? I kind of felt like that in the beginning until I started the business. And then I realized it's not just about, am I being greedy? It is, can I make rent this month? Can I pay my employees? Can I pay all of the taxes that come along with running a small business? Can I pay for the other things that I need, the boxes, the labels, the tape to seal the boxes? Can I buy the nice boxes? So it becomes less about, am I being greedy, and more about, will this price point support my business? So I've slowly raised it to the point where this price point is reasonable for what people are willing to pay, and it's going to support the business and keep us afloat month to month without me really worrying about, am I going to have enough money this month to make payroll? So I think as your business grows, you become less fearful about raising your prices because you have to charge what is necessary to maintain the business.